Okay. Mine is also using indexes, but looking at crop yield at a particular farm in southern Utah. I had a farmer that I'm working with express a challenge for himself. So he double crops. So he grows two crops in one field per year. And he cuts his triticale in, you know, May or even into April at times, follows that up with a planting of corn. Then he takes that corn out in September, and within 2 or 3 weeks, he's trying to have that back into triticale for the wintertime. And so he's trying, and in that window from harvest to planting of different crops, he's trying to fertilize, spread manure, do some of his work. And he's like, hey, can we get a number or at least an idea of my yield before I have to cut? Because there's a huge trucking challenge for manure, bringing manure to these fields all across his farm in a very short window of time. From when he gets that map off of his forage harvester to he needs to be able to plant it. So this is the goal, to see if we can find an index. This is the simple version before we go weird into machine learning and other things. Is there an index that can help us see yield patterns early? So that's the overall idea of the project, is can we determine that? So the data is coming from, I have yield data, which comes from a forage harvester if you're unfamiliar. And this is silage corn, where you chop the entire plant. So stalk, cob, everything down to the ground, you chop it all. And it comes through and it's getting output or blown into a truck that's then getting dumped into a pit and being packed and fermenting. So that harvester is taking data as it goes. It's collecting a yield map everywhere it's cutting. So that's where the yield map and yield data that I have is coming from. I am using Sentinel-2 for surface reflectance, the harmonized package. Again, like all of you mentioned, Sentinel-2's got the 10-meter resolution. It gets me a pretty good image for a field cropping system. And this is last year's system. So these are the three fields, and these are the yield maps from the harvester. I did have to send them through ArcGIS and kind of classify them and reformat them. So there's three fields: Modena 6, Modena 2, and crop map. In each of the red boxes, I identified some potentially big yield problem spots. This one probably has some of the best. And then on the others, you see green is anything above the average, which is about, there's two different colors of green. So there's an above a 10. There's 9. This is tons per acre. And then the yellow, we're getting below average. Red, we're down below like 5 tons to the acre, which is a big problem, big concern. There is some, when you use automated collecting systems like a forage harvester, you do get these speckled changes. That's why you see red in random spots. This is the turnaround location. They cut this direction and then they turn around. They cut in a circle. So you get kind of a weird data spot there every now and then. So we're not worried too much about those. So I obtained these images, reclassified them, set them up to a 10-meter resolution to match my Sentinel. And then chose 5 different indexes. I chose these either out of my own interest, meaning that you got a chlorophyll vegetation index, or a couple of them came from research papers that said that these are ones that they have been using or attempting to use to predict yield or at least measure it. So out of the 5, I then took my yield map and I started to look for matching spots. If we look at the GARI, the GDVI, and even the NDVI, there really isn't a lot to see variation wise. This is about 10 days before they cut. So this is fully grown, 10-foot corn, dark green as it can be. And so when I go through the image and I look for pixel values or NDVI max and min values, It really is. That green field on under Gari, it is 0.99 or 1. Like it is just that's what it measured. It measured 0.99 or 1. I couldn't find other than that little yellow boom or that pivot road. I couldn't find any other values. So that index saturates at max yield and it's just basically useless at that point. Same with the GDVI. NDVI followed a similar pattern. It did pick up a little bit here in the corner and the Go Savvy as well. The CVI, it picked up this kind of band in here, which isn't super strong. There is a pretty good patch right there. If you can see it and you squint your eyes right, there is a little bit of lightness in the Go Savvy, but not enough to make a good measurement. And so that was kind of disappointing at first because you're like, oh, darn it, there really isn't a good map there. Because if you look on this blue, this should be way above average yield. This should be great edges. But when you look at the yield map, I mean, yes, you are seeing this darker green, which is good, but not in such a way that can make it be confidently estimate, hey, you've got 50 acres of great production and it's relatively, I can't say that's 10 acre or 10 tons to the acre. There's not a good correlation there. So I went to another field. I saw a little bit better patterns. Again, Gari and GDVI kind of saturated. NDVI started to pick up some more bad spots. Go Savvy. I don't know how well you can see this. When you're looking at your computer screen, and even at this angle, it's kind of hard. You don't see them as well. But that Go Savvy, although it's not highly contrasting in colors, does actually pick up a lot of these weak bands of health or production. And then the CVI again picks up some bands, produces a lot of blue. So that means I've got great health, I've got great chlorophyll presence, but this is one of the poor yielding fields. And so again, I'm not able to relate that good chlorophyll measurement to good biomass yield. I can see bad spots in the field, but I cannot see good. I can't make that correlation draw. And finally, Crawford East. Oops. Again, kind of the same story. The CVI really is picking up a lot. It so far has been my best index for finding the locations and the areas. This one would make you think, hey, maybe I do have a pretty good correlation with where the blue is and where some of my higher yielding areas are. But right now, all I'm able to do is locate bad zones, which still is potentially useful for the farmer because if he can identify bad zones and I can quantify and say, draw a box around it, put a number of acres to it, and even somewhat give him an idea of, since he's not direct fertilizer, it's mostly compost and manure, he can make it a use of that. So that was 2 weeks or 10 days prior. Then we went a month. We tried to go out about a month prior. And we start to see some of these a little bit better pattern right before everything got too saturated. That last couple weeks of growth really filled up the chlorophyll. So I'm starting to see a little better pattern. NDVI, somebody clogged pivot or, and I don't, does everybody understand what pivots do and what they are for the most part? Okay, big irrigation pipe basically that runs around in a circle, has sprinkler pipes. So when you see something like this ring, you plugged it. You either plugged a set of nozzles or something broke. And so that band didn't get good water. And the fact that it's in that perfect circle, you're like, yeah, something on that tower broke. And it kind of screwed it up. But that's a good thing to see either way. But I can still see those patterns. I can still see some of those locations. This one matches fairly well here again with CVI. I can see all of those patches. I can see them a little bit now in the Go Savvy better. So now we go 2 months out. Um, now I am looking at a lot of bare dirt. This is right shortly after planting. It is germinating, it is up, but it is not very good. But already I can see patterns of location. I can see some of the very same spots, and it's just a bad piece of ground. It's not a yield necessarily as far as um, farmer caused or issue. That's a poor piece of ground that either has bad nutrients or bad soil type. It's not getting watered properly for the soil type. So what I did is I went and I gathered all those yield data, and this is a 5-year average of yield on the right here, and a single year 2023 average or yield map to just see, okay, is my remote sensing picking up crop, or is it really just a soil almost producing me another soils map multiple times through the year? And it seems to be at this time, I just have I have a repeating problem. I have a persistent issue in those areas. I have a weird, really good growth ring that I could harvest really well on. And so what I take from this and what this means for the remote sensing side, most farmers do not have this much yield data. This is a thing that's been around a while, but it's not been very well used or recorded. Old maps that just don't exist in a lot of cases. So the remote sensing did show me in 1 year, it found the bad spots. It found the concerning areas. It didn't yet give me relevant numbers to make decisions on, but it did show me where my bad problems are before the season started. So if I go to any new grower who doesn't have this forage harvester on their machine, I can draw them management zones. I can draw them good and bad areas. I can't say, hey, this is predicted to be X yield. That's the next step. That's where I'm going to try to go the machine learning route and do an empirical comparison between these and see if I can. But right now, I can just tell you, hey, these are the areas we can make changes for or modify the way we manage them to hopefully give a farmer some information they can't obtain otherwise. So that is all I have for you.